Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Now, Sienna is with me today, in case you're wondering who that other voice is, the gravelly tones of Rob Cameron not here this morning. He's having a week off. Sienna is with us, and Sienna, we've got someone on the phone from Robinvale, and I reckon you should introduce him.
Oh goodness, no pressure here, none at all. So on the phone it's a personal contact of mine actually. It's my father, John Mannix, back in Robinvale. He is a primary school teacher down there. He does a lot of work around the small community, which I'm sure he'll be able to give us more details on shortly.
Morning, Dad.
Good morning. How are we going down there, Neil?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
What about Sienna doing her finest work here?
Yes, and it's good to hear her on the I would use the old term, the wireless, but it's definitely not these days.
Well, it probably is on the wireless in so much it's the Wi-Fi, but yes, I get your drift. It's an annoying habit of broadcasters to call it the wireless still, so it is what it is.
They still do.
Yeah. So this morning we're doing regional Roundup, and we're just going around places to see what's going on in towns, and particularly, I guess, the impact of 2020 and how that operated in your town and your region, and I guess, how things have worked through. How badly did COVID hit a place like Robinvale?
It did. Like all of Australia, it definitely did have some major effects here. Because of our location, we're on the border. So we had situations where we needed permits to just cross, 2 kilometres across the river. As soon as you went across the bridge, you needed a permit initially with the New South Wales government. But then later on, when the Victorians put a embargo on, or want of a better word, we also needed passes or permits to get across. So it was something we're not used to. We're used to just jumping in the car, going wherever we wanted, and those restrictions were definitely noticeable, and probably the ones there. A small community like Robinvale, we've got around about 2,000 people in the actual township, and anywhere between 5 and 12,000, depending on your estimates, in the area. And we had to, most of our shopping, doctors, specialists, and that in Mildura. The quickest way to get there is actually to go through New South Wales to get there. So it was quite a daily occurrence for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I heard that for people who don't know, Mildura is usually about an hour's trip from Robinvale. And I did hear from a few locals that it was taking possibly up to 3 hours to travel that far.
Yeah, with the border passes, once we got to coming into Victoria from New South Wales, when the New South Wales government had the passes in place, you had to wait, and sometimes it was a wait of an hour to get across the bridge and through the checkpoint before you could continue on your journey. So it was adding anywhere up to an hour each way, because you'd have that when you came back as well, because you'd cut across into New South Wales to travel and do that on the return trip as well.
So for those who are not 100% certain, it's between Mildura and Swan Hill, and we're used to seeing places like Echuca Moama, Albury Wodonga, Yarrawonga, Mulwala. Is there an equivalent on the other side of the river to Robinvale? My vague recollection says Euston.
Yes.
That's totally right, Neil. We better not forget Euston. We're constantly reminded. No, we are a twin town or border town, so like Albury Wodonga or any of those. And we have people on both sides of the river that rely quite heavily on moving between the states. And the initial confusion when the border passes and all that were put in was quite distressing. I know I had quite a few older people who were living in New South Wales, but just outside of what they called the bubble. And they were banned from coming into Victoria for a period of time until the governments came to a bit of common sense and realised that they needed that for, well, as I said, shopping, doctors, anything else.
Yep. So obviously Robinvale is quite known for the fresh produce. that it does bring into the local supermarkets and even further down here. Did that closure have any impact on the transport of those?
Not on the actual transportation of it. It didn't stop. Most of the trucks that go through had their own passes, even into South Australia, which is for us also a market that's probably as close as Melbourne. We're about the same distance from Adelaide as we are from the city of Melbourne itself. So with the grapes, almonds, carrots, all the other produce that we actually produce here, the transportation wasn't a concern. We're still feeling the effects of COVID, primarily because of it's harvest season at the present moment for the table grapes and also for the almonds, and they do have a large labour requirement. And this year it's been very difficult to get people to actually work.
Particularly when the locals come down to Geelong and do radio when they should be up there picking almonds.
Well, I told her she could have had a job, not a problem. Several.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful.
So with Sienna mentioned that you're a teacher. Do you have a lot of cross-border kids coming to school in the mornings, or is it pretty much Victorians go to Victoria, New South Wales go to New South Wales?
No, as I said, Euston is just across the river, but it has a primary school, and there's some transition of students between both sides, from Victoria to New South Wales, and New South Wales especially to Victoria. The closest secondary school is the one that I am part of, the P to 12 college, which is local. So we do have a lot of students who come across from New South Wales into Victoria daily. And, as I said, with passes, they still needed to have passes to do that on their bus runs, which there. That
would have been fun.
We also have buses that travel to Mildura too for different levels of education. So they were travelling into New South Wales as well to do the trip up there. Otherwise, it would add a good 30 to 40 k's onto a trip one way. So probably an extra 80 or 100 k's back and forwards.
Well, we're going to ask everybody who we talked to this morning, because we're off to Mulwala, we're off to Port Fairy, we're off to Nil, we're off to Mildura, we're off everywhere this morning. We're going to ask them the same question. So here's our question for you. Suppose I had, there's a long weekend coming up around Easter. Let's suppose I can get some accommodation near Robinvale. What am I doing to fill in 2 or 3 days at Easter in your neck of the woods? Why should I come to Robinvale?
Why should you come? I'll be very patriotic here. It's the best bit of river in the country. We're right on the Murray. We have ski race weekend that normally is over the Labor Day weekend. Unfortunately, it's been cancelled for this year, as all ski races are. But if you want to fish, you want to just sit and relax on the river, this time of the year is absolute prime. It's the best. People ask me what season I prefer. It's autumn. It's beautiful days, like today's going to be 30 degrees. I'm sitting around a pair of shorts and a singlet, which I constantly remind your co-host of.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, she's just written on a piece of paper a horrible visual for some reason. I can't. But now I'm going to either be seen to be an absolute genius or a complete moron here. There's a stretch there called Boundary Bend. Am I right?
Yes, there is. They're about 30 minutes out of Robinvale, but heading back towards Swan Hill.
See, I do know my stuff.
Is Boundary Bend, and it's a lovely spot on the river. And the thing is, if you want to go camping, you can go anywhere along the river and camp. It's free. You don't have to pay for it or anything else anywhere, even beyond Boundary Bend, and the same right down through to Mildura. There's some lovely spots that you can get into in national parks and forests and just enjoy yourselves. So.
And if folk are coming up from Geelong, let's say they would probably come up the Sunraysia Highway and branch off at Sea Lake or somewhere. Would that be right?
If they're coming from Geelong, definitely. Yeah, up through Ballarat and possibly up through St Arnaud, cut across to Witchyproof and then up to Sea Lake and cut back to Manangatang, Robinvale. It's probably the quickest way for you.
You can tell that you haven't spent a lot of time in North Central Victoria by calling it St Arnaud. Everyone in that part of the world calls it Snarnard.
Yes, yeah.
I did 12 months in Charlton, so I knew all about Witchy and Snarnard.
So they definitely do.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, they're lovely little spots on the way too.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you've sold the town on the river, but you forgot to mention those prize-winning bloody jam donuts I'm being craving.
You're talking about the homemade ones or the ones at the market?
Oh, I don't know, Rosalie down at the Rotary Club there does an amazing job.
They definitely do. We have a Rotary market, the Robinvale Euston Rotary Club hold a country market once a month. We had it last Friday, twilight, while it's daylight savings time, and we go back to Saturdays as of next month, the second Saturday of the month. There's a plug for them, and they do have the absolute best jam donuts in Australia. I can guarantee that. I've eaten a few and I've enjoyed them.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to Sienna last weekend after a very, 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 very wet day at the football, and I said to her something about how often you get back to Robinvale, and she said, about once a month, and now I know why about once a month. She just goes back for the jam donuts. I thought she was going back to see her mum and dad.
Oh, goodness.
No, we're
that.
only secondary. It's always tied in with them when the local market is... it's a fantastic, just a great little market and run by volunteers through the Rotary Club of Euston and Robinvale. So.
Excellent. Well, John, we better go and get in the car and drive to somewhere else now and have a chat to somebody else. But thanks for joining us bright and early on a Saturday morning, and thanks for lending us your daughter to be our co-host this morning.
Not a problem. I'm certain she's thoroughly enjoying it, Neil, and thank you for giving us a call today. And thank you for allowing the opportunities for Sienna as well.
No worries. I'll tell you what, she's looking a whole lot more relieved than she was 15 minutes ago too. I think it was a good choice to get Dad on as the first guest.
Thank you very much, Neil. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, mate. John up in Robinvale, and there you go. You've done your first radio interview. Well done, you.
Oh, we survived that.
We are going to hear from a couple of our sponsors now, and then we are going to hear a song, and then we might head off to... Where are we heading off to next?
I think we're heading off to Port Fairy to speak to Carly down there.
All right, well, we'll do that very, very shortly. You're listening to 94.7 The Pulse.